This is what I expected. This is what I wanted when I heard Disney Plus was going to do Phase 4 MCU shows. This type of quirky, fun, strange, diving into the setups that Endgame gave us. This is what I was looking for, and this episode was nothing but setup. But what it promises has me really excited. What did you think? Let's talk about it.
I love it. Makes you sound super smart.
I am smart.
I know.
I am Durbin of Durbania, and I am burdened with glorious purpose. Therefore, hit that subscribe button. Welcome to Durbania. I'm excited to talk about the series premiere of Loki, Glorious Purpose. What did you think of this episode? I'm anxious to hear your thoughts, what you thought of this introduction, and that's really all that it was. We don't have too much else to go on, but I think it was a great setup for this world and a great setup for this adventure that we're about to go on with Loki. So what did you think? Let's talk about that in the comments.
I need your unique Loki perspective.
Now, personally, I just had a ton of fun just watching this episode. Right from the very beginning, I felt like I was watching Endgame. They did a really good job with that setup of showing all of the Avengers. I couldn't help but wonder, how much did it cost to use Robert Downey Jr.'s likeness and Chris Pine? It's not Chris Pine. Chris Evans. Gosh, so good at names. How much did it cost to use Robert Downey Jr.'s likeness, Chris Evans' likeness, like all these characters and all their likenesses just in this first episode? But it was really cool because it just brings you right back to that setup that they had in Endgame. So right from the get-go, it's like, hey, remember, we promised this. We left you dangling on this. What happened to that Loki who grabbed that cube and just vanished? What happened to that timeline? What happened to that whole little variant? Weren't they supposed to trim the branches? So it brings us right back into that. Really, it's just within seconds of him grabbing a hold of the Tesseract and using it, he gets arrested by the TVA, the Time Variant Authority. Made me think of the movie Time Cop. Here are these time cops, essentially, that show up and arrest Loki. And what I thought was very cool about this whole sequence of events is Loki is just as confused as you and I are. I loved it. This whole weird, quirky, bureaucratic setup, it kind of reminded me of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy when they were waiting in line and had to fill out all that paperwork, or some things out of Men in Black. So that's what this entire setup reminded me of, but I loved how they executed it. Because, like I said, we are just as confused as Loki. We are going through this whole situation with Loki. Probably one of my favorite moments is where Loki gets dropped down from that, I guess, elevator. Like the floor opens, he drops down, and this cat's reaction. That cat is a star, and I really hope it has a bigger role.
Oh, mother fucking!
You okay?
Yeah, it's just a scratch. No.
But I think one of my favorite parts in this open is he's forced to take a ticket. So the one dude doesn't take a ticket, but Loki does take a ticket. But then as he's walking, we have that cartoon. Reminded me of Jurassic Park with Mr. DNA as he kind of explained the entire thing. So you have this little cartoon clock explaining the TVA, the variants, and the timeline. And I think overall did a good job. I mean, I think Endgame did a pretty good job setting up this idea of branches to the timeline. So you're kind of anxious to get into that anyway and understand what does that mean? What are the branches to the timeline? Which then takes you right back to the very beginning. When Loki is arrested and he's brought through the doorway to this place, they leave a device in the desert sands and they push the button and it prunes. It literally prunes that timeline. So the variant timeline created by Loki when he used the Tesseract is now destroyed. And on the one hand, it's like, well, that's dark. But then you realize, well, it's not like it's killing anybody. It just clipped that branch so everybody continues in the timeline they're supposed to continue on. And this Loki is just now existing outside of time and space. So all of that I thought was really interesting, and it was really funny that the one dude didn't grab a ticket and Loki did, and I'm like, what's gonna happen because this guy didn't grab a ticket? Oh, he can't stand trial? That's what the ticket's for? And when you can't stand trial, dude, he got, like, what, a variant just erased, pruned out of existence? I think that's what they call it. And Loki's like, where's my ticket? And pulling out the ticket really fast. Like, moments like that were really great. And it's the Loki that we know and love. And that's one of the things I loved about this. This didn't feel like a different character. It felt like the Loki that we know and love. And I was wondering, what were they going to do? Like, how are they going to grow his character? Because one of the things I really liked about Loki was watching him evolve. The way his character evolved through Avengers and Thor, the Dark World, through Thor Ragnarok, and you know, him being killed by Thanos in the end. So I liked who he became over the course of the movies, and I was wondering, now how are they going to do that in this? And I feel like they did a great job overall. And bringing in Owen Wilson, what I liked is this buddy cop setup. So Owen Wilson is on this case. This mysterious time variant murderer is on the loose, and he's trying to solve it, but this person is exceedingly good, and they dropped some pretty good clues in the beginning that I didn't think about until we got to the twist reveal at the end. But you understand why he's thinking what a good idea to have Loki on this case. So he gets Loki, they sit in this room and have this incredible interview. But like I said, this whole thing is set up. So we're learning about the TVA, and I think they did a good job showing us the TVA, their purpose, and all that they stand for. But they also do a good job setting up this buddy cop chemistry between Owen Wilson and Tom Hiddleston. So like, I'm very much so looking forward to seeing those two carry on their parts as it goes. It looks like this is going to be really fun, and a lot of really great stuff is going to happen within this show. And I love kind of just the general weirdness of it.
Please sign to verify this is everything you've ever said.
This is absurd.
So finally, we're getting into the multiple timeline idea, the multiverse, this idea that once there was a multiverse, all these mingled timelines, all these time wars, and then these trio of timekeepers suddenly organized everything into what is called the sacred timeline. So already that is really interesting to learn about that. So they're trying to stop a multiverse war and keep a sacred timeline. But what's really interesting is all the questions that raises. For instance, here's Loki standing trial, and as he's standing trial, he's the one in trouble for being the variant. But it was the Avengers that traveled through time, made a mistake that allowed the Tesseract to roll over to Loki, and he just used it. He was just acting according to his nature. It was the Avengers who changed time. But the judges said the Avengers did what they were supposed to do. You didn't do what you were supposed to do. Well, how is Loki supposed to know what he's supposed to do? So it actually opens up these questions about free will. Do we actually have free will in the sacred timeline? That these timekeepers are trying to keep everything moving and going according to a certain plan. So existing out of time, do they know how time ends? And they need to move everything to that particular ending. Like, that's incredibly interesting to me. How do they do that? Are they good and merciful? Are they cruel? I want to know how they decide that what the Avengers did was supposed to happen and what Loki did wasn't supposed to happen. And how can they arrest him for it and put him on trial when he's just, you know, doing what Loki does? So like, that's really interesting to me, the types of questions that it raises right out of the gate. But by raising those questions, it does give you certain expectations for the season. So we've been waiting to learn about the Marvel Multiverse. What is the Marvel Multiverse? So this is a great setup, and this is a great introduction, having us ask the right questions while showing us that there is this TVA that deals with getting rid of these variant timelines to keep a sacred timeline. And it's both kind of dark, but very interesting how they prune the branches. So here you have an Endgame, Captain America, who went and put the Infinity Stones back where they belong to clip the branches. So like, that's kind of an interesting concept now. Is there any chance we're going to get to see what that looks like in this season? I highly doubt it, but that would be really cool if we got a chance to see what that looks like. But we also know there's this whole thing called the TVA.
We protect the proper flow of time.
You picked up the Tesseract, breaking reality. I want you to help us fix it.
The other thing that I thought was so well done in this episode was when you had Owen Wilson showing Loki his timeline. So the whole timeline that we know. And this is what I thought was really interesting because I liked the character growth of Loki. So my biggest concern coming into this show was, okay, I don't want this Loki and some other universe to undermine the death and sacrifice of Loki when Thanos killed him. Like, that was a heavy emotional moment, and I didn't really want that undermined by the existence of the multiverse and the existence of this variant. So I had a little bit of those concerns in my mind, but I thought they handled it so well with that weird little machine looking like it's out of the 60s and that film strip, which is his timeline. So Owen Wilson showed him a little bit of the timeline, but it was really fun to see Loki and his mischievousness, I don't even know the word, to see Loki be the god of mischief and get a hold of the little time twister thing and get the thing off his neck, and how he moved around the office, to see kind of how clever and powerful he is. But then what's interesting is when he finds that drawer where the Tesseract is, and there's all these Infinity Stones from different timelines that the people in this office use as paperweights. This moment, Loki saw true power, and he kind of just surrendered to it. So here he is wanting to rule, but here he's now standing in a place where Infinity Stones hold no power. So he's seeing, like, I guess this is true power. Where am I? And so he goes back into the room and he finishes watching his timeline. It was very emotional when Owen Wilson showed him his mother dying, and I think they did a good job with his emotions, and Tom Hiddleston did a great job. So this was hilarious and quirky and had these moments of heart where you see this emotion on Tom Hiddleston's face, but then he goes through his timeline, and I was hoping he would see this. And it was very interesting as it reviewed like the MCU as we know it, Loki's timeline as we know it, up to Thanos snapping his neck, and his reaction seeing that. His whole thing is he wants to rule. Like, yeah, he'll take away freedom from other people so that they're not burdened with that, but it's his choice to rule. He is choosing his own life and his own actions. But watching this film strip play out, he's seeing, do I even really have choice? Like, you're seeing all of this go through his mind, as well as the mix of emotions as he saw Thanos snap his neck and what his life, his timeline led up to. And then you have that big, huge twist at the end, that the actual villain of this season is Loki himself. I mean, if there's anything we already know about Loki, and this episode emphasized, he does not want to be ruled. He hates that idea that he's not making choices, that he doesn't have free will. So I feel like the motivations of there being a Loki variant, maybe trying to create a multiverse war to dethrone the trio timekeepers and be a timekeeper himself, because now he's seen ultimate power, I think that makes sense. So what's going to happen with this variant Loki that we're going to be following? So we saw this Loki realize this place is the place of like ultimate power. What was he thinking in that moment? It's all incredibly interesting, and I'm excited for the rest of the season. So now, what did you think of episode 1, Glorious Purpose of the show Loki? To me, this is what the Marvel shows should have been. Like, I enjoyed WandaVision, I liked The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but this really got my attention right from the beginning, and I'm really excited to see where this is gonna go. What did you think? And be sure to click this video over here and you can check out my MCU ranking complete with WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier and see what I really thought of those shows and how I ranked them. I'm Durbin. Thanks for checking out Durbania.